Hey everybody, this is So Heidi, and you're listening to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. We all know that the fashion industry is brutally competitive and it takes loads of hard work to get ahead. The problem is that everyone's secretive and tight-lipped about their ways. After working as a designer and educator for over a decade, I wanted to help break down those barriers and bring you valuable knowledge from industry experts, and this show is exactly where you'll find that. Whether you're trying to break into the fashion world, make yourself more marketable, launch your own label, or become a successful freelancer, we'll help you get ahead in the cutthroat fashion industry. This is episode 27 of the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast, and today I'm chatting with Nathalie Kraynina, an independent ready-to-wear and bespoke bridal designer. I love this episode so much because Natalie is completely transparent, honest, and humble about the emotional, financial, and physical tolls it takes to be an independent designer. Natalie chats about the importance of building time into your schedule to work on things you may find hard, like marketing, networking, and promotion, why making it through failures is the true sign of success, and much like the inspiration behind this podcast, and one of my favorite things she talks about over and over in this episode, is why working together as a community and sharing resources is the best way for all of us to get ahead.
Be out there because there's so many people like you and they're looking for the same thing and they're chasing the same dream, and sharing information is the key because we're not a corporation. We don't have the resources that, an Oscar de la Renta has.
As always, before we jump into the interview, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be really grateful if you could share it with 3 other people who you know would enjoy it as well. Go ahead and hit pause right now and take 30 seconds to send the podcast either via text or email, whatever's easiest, to 3 people you know who would love to listen. Okay, done? Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Now, if you'd like to access the show notes for today's episode, visit sfdnetwork.com/27. Now, on to the interview with Natalie. All right. Well, welcome, Natalie, to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. Can you start by introducing yourself to everybody and telling us a little bit about what you do in the fashion industry?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nathalie Kraynina. I am a fashion designer based in New York. I had a line of ready-to-wear women's clothing, and now I refocused to doing custom-made bridal gowns.
Okay, awesome. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey from your ready-to-wear to the custom bridal gowns. You and I chatted once before this conversation, and we talked a little bit about, working in the wedding business and how that was not really a path that you saw yourself going down. So can you tell us a little bit about how that business evolved from your ready-to-wear collection?
Yes. I went to school in FIT here in New York, and after I graduated, I was lucky. Somehow I got my first order before I even had any company or anything kind of started officially. I got a first order from a woman that I went to school with. She had a store in Brooklyn, and she ordered 5 shirts from me. They were silk blouses. And that's when I decided to start on my own path. I was still working full-time at another company, but, I made the shirts, I printed the hand tags, I got the labels, the care labels, and then it started from there. I did a line of clothing. I presented it with during Fashion Week with Williamsburg Fashion Weekend, which was an event that we put together. It was focused only on underground designers that were socially responsible. And my line, I think, had a really great start. It got a lot of press attention. I got, a bunch of orders from small boutiques and then some bigger boutiques. It was sold on Farfetch and ASOS. And that was my true passion. Always wanted to have my own line. I always wanted to do women's wear. Bridal was never anything that interested me. I was never one of those girls that wanted to have a big wedding or, think about the dress or any of that. And simultaneously with that, one of my best friends was getting married. And she's also a cool fashion girl. She never thought about her wedding dress. And she asked me to do it. She's like, I don't like anything that is out there or whatever I like. It's just so crazy expensive and you're my best friend, so you have to do this dress for me. So that was kind of the start of it. That was a very long time ago. It was over 6 years ago. So I made her dress, and it was a beautiful experience. We had so much fun just creating something so special for her, and the whole day was amazing. And, it was great. But again, I still wasn't thinking that that's something that I really need to focus or want to do. And in the meantime, I kept doing new collections and showing, and I was doing trade shows, and I was doing pop-up shops. The life of an independent designer, just trying to make it. Like I said, I had a couple successful seasons. I went into production with factory 2 times. And after that, just kind of everything, it was just too much to sustain an independent designer. Some of my store closed, another one moved, a couple of them, they just started selling different things. And I was kind of at a point in my life where I really needed to make a change because there was no way I can live as an independent fashion designer without any funding. It's just very hard to stay afloat. And I literally, this might sound a little bit, out there, but I was at a point in my life where I was turning 30 soon, and I needed to make a decision. Am I going to keep going this route, or do I have to get a job and start living my life? Because as anybody knows, when you're in business for yourself, it's very hard to keep sane. So I always make my big decisions based on my gut, and that's why I've always went into fashion, and I never doubted myself because that's always been my gut, that I always knew that that's what I need to do. And I said to myself, I need a sign. And the next day, a bride walked into my studio and was like, I looked you up. I think you're great. I want you to make my wedding dress. And that was basically my sign. And I decided to really focus on the wedding. And I've kind of fallen in love with it. I think what I offer my brides is very different than what's out there because it's custom and they can wear something either more fashionable or something that is completely non-bridal, like a pantsuit, but make it special for their occasion and make it very elegant, or, make it that it's not just like buying a white suit. It would be, creating it from scratch and making it fit to them, to their body and their personality. So I think ever since I decided to go into the bridal, it's just things have been happening like a lot more organically. When I was in fashion, I was chasing after magazine, I was chasing after stores, I was chasing after everybody. And now things are coming to me, and I took that as a sign from, you could call it from God or the universe, but I just feel like it's the right path for me. And even though I never imagined doing bridal, I'm loving it now.
That's so great. And I love, Okay, I know I said I wanted to jump right into the bridal, but now that you've sort of introduced yourself and talked about what you did before the bridal, I do want to go a little bit into some of the stuff you said there with what you did with your own collection. And it's really interesting, the contrast that you noticed between doing your own collection. You said, I'm chasing everything. You know, it's like you just feel like you're constantly grasping and trying to get the next thing. Whereas the bridal is just coming a lot more organically, which is like a breath of relief as a entrepreneur and as an independent designer. So before we go into the bridal even more, your journey as an independent designer is great. I mean, you experienced this high of having success, getting your product into stores, and, getting great press coverage. But then there was a drop. You said, stores started closing or just carrying different product. And so before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about your start as an independent designer. I know you said you did some trade shows and you did some pop-up shops and some fashion shows with some underground groups, but a lot of the listeners out here in the audience are trying to start their own label or are interested in starting their own label or have already started. And so I'd love for you to talk us through, you're in New York City. Obviously there's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of access to amazing resources. And so what were some of the things that you did to get attention, I know the first order you got was from someone you knew, but, to go to that next level, to get your product into those next stores, to get that press coverage, what did that process look like for you? And how did you strategically get some of those opportunities to move forward?
Okay. Well, first, being a part of... So I'll tell you a little bit about Williamsburg Fashion Weekend. It was, like I said, it was a 2-day event where it would be about 14 and 15 designers, 6 or 7 each night. And it was open to the public, but also as a group, collectively, we can all of us can put our own fashion show, but as a group, collectively, we can have the venue and we can have... we can invite press to one location. We can invite people and just kind of all of us put in all of our resources into one event. And it was actually started by Arthur Arbit. He is a very close friend of mine now, and he is one of the best tailors in New York. He did his own collection as well. And his idea was basically that we're stronger together. And that actually really helped me because a lot of the connections I made, not only with other designers, but press or stores, it was somehow related to being a part of this kind of close community of independent designers. We all do different things, but if I have a great factory or a great connection for fabric, sharing that information, it's not only good for me because the factory is going to be happy that I'm bringing them more business than just my small, it's a small independent designer, it's a small order. But it's also good for the other designer, and that really helped me. I really was out there. I was like, I had a calendar. I had it in my calendar that I have to go and network at least once a week. And when I say network, I don't mean, just going blindly to things. But if there's a magazine party or there's a gallery opening, or I would make it a point that I have to go out. And it's very hard after you've worked 10 or 12 hours a day to want to go to these things. But that was also very important. I met one of the photographers that he shot all my lookbooks. I met him at a magazine release party. And so many other people I just met. One of my best friends who actually is a journalist, and she did the first write-up on me ever. she came to my fashion show, and then she called me for an interview. And later on, now we've become very good friends. But it was through just really putting yourself out there and going to, because in New York, there's something happening, some kind of event, something happening every day almost, not just during Fashion Week. So that was one thing that I did. And then another thing is I really took it into my own hands for the press to really email and chase after publications. Do you want to do a blog post on me? Do you want to do an article on me? Do you want to, just really chasing them. So it was almost like I had to have a part of my week where these things were scheduled, where those are the things I would work on. And just having it organized that way really, really helped me.
Both of the things you said there, I love so much. The first one is, being part of a community and sharing those resources with people and like giving them your factory or your fabric source, or, hey, I got this awesome press coverage. Maybe this writer would be interested in what you're doing. It's something that this show is really focused around, is helping other people in the industry. It's such a tight-lipped industry, and it's, so quote unquote competitive that people can be they hold their resources very close to their chest. And so I love that you found a group and that you guys were all so open and looking at your quote unquote competition, not as competition, but like your friends that, let's all work together. We're stronger to do this together. And so I think just as a one sentence takeaway is really work with the people around you and keep them close to you instead of pushing them away and trying to feel like you're in competition with them. That's not going to do you any good.
100%. I mean, one of the stores that I was in, a friend of mine recommended that I get in touch with them because he already had been selling to them for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're going to pick and choose. You're not going to recommend, something that doesn't make any sense. But that is one of the things that I noticed from going from fashion to bridal is that fashion is just so close. It's like so like catty almost, and it's just very everybody talks a big game, but nobody wants to say that what the struggles are. And and we're all going through those struggles as independent designers. It's hard. I mean, putting a fashion show together is so expensive, and it doesn't really do anything for your line. It's great to do it, but nobody really tells you that nothing happens at the fashion show when you're in school, for example. And things like that, focusing on the business part, nobody really talks about that. And that's what really, kills you. Because I have a full closet full of clothes that I made, samples, that didn't make it to any stores. And they're great, but nobody talks about those things, And I really feel that being open and sharing together your resources. I mean, all of the designers that we were part of this fashion show together, just this community, we were all very focused on being socially responsible and having things made the right way. That was one of the main reasons why Arthur put the show together, is because he wanted to showcase that fashion can be cool, but also be made in a good, responsible way. And It was great. It was great to have that communication with everyone.
Yeah. That's so amazing. You guys, you find sort of the commonality and then all work and thrive together, and you have those people that you can talk to when you are struggling, when you're like, I have this whole closet full of samples and I don't, nothing ever made it anywhere. That's a tough reality, but like you said, no one ever talks about it. And that can be hard. You start bottling up so much of that stuff and, you know, you reach burnout, you just start going crazy. And so having that support group, not only to help each other out with resources and to celebrate when things are good, but also just to have a support group and some people to lean on when you're feeling like things are shitty and stuff is not working and it's hard, because that is the reality of it a lot of the time. It's a fight.
It's a constant fight.
Yeah.
And because we're creatives, so for us, you know, the creation of whatever you're making, that's the most exciting part. That's the part that we only want to work on. So learning about working on all these other aspects and having the discipline to work on them, that's something that really I strongly encourage anyone that wants to build a successful brand. Those are the things that you have to focus, because obviously if you have a talent for, that's going to come for whatever you're making, that's going to come naturally to you, and you're going to want to work harder on it. So you have to really make it a point to work harder on the things that are not your strongest, which in most cases, I would say, especially for independent designers and artists, is not the business part.
Yeah. Well, and that leads right into the other thing that you did, you know, that was so smart, is you said, I physically put it on my calendar that I was going to go to something once a week, because you can't do this in a vacuum. You can't just hibernate in your studio 24 hours a day and then expect people to discover who you are and find your stuff. Like, you have to go and put yourself out there and talk to people and meet with people and make friends who are doing cool things that might have other connections or opportunities for you. And like you said, that's how you met a lot of people that you wound up doing business with, is going to these things and forcing yourself, even if you were exhausted, to go do that quote unquote networking, you know, but going out and meeting people and talking to people about what you're working on and sharing stories. It's so important to do that. So I love that you were so thoughtful and conscious of, I'm putting this in my calendar and I'm going to make sure it happens at least once a week.
It really was an effort because, you know, like I said, you are exhausted. You have a million other things that you have to do. And probably the last thing on your mind is to go to a cocktail or a party or, you know, a talk about how to be successful or anything. But I'll give you one example that really worked out for me. After I became, you know, I got a little bit more traction, I wanted to have a studio that was not in my apartment. And I went to a networking event and I actually met the perfect person. Her name is Casey Head, and she had she had a studio that was called Brooklyn Fashion League, and it was again another collective of designers that shared the resources of a studio. And she was looking for designers. She had a couple of openings. That's how we met. I walked in the next day, and I was there for a year and a half. We're you know, best friends now too. And I met other designers that worked there, and we had events there where, you know, we could sell together, or we could, you know, show together to buyers or whatever we needed to do. So yeah, it's important to be out there because there's so many people like you, and they're looking for the same thing, and they're chasing the same dream, and sharing information is the key, because we're not a corporation. We don't have the resources that, you know, an Oscar de la Renta has.
I love that so much. There's so many other people out there like you and sharing the same dream, and you guys everybody has to connect. That's really, really a great sort of mindset. Okay, so you were able to build and grow through, I mean, you hustled, no doubt. And then it got to a point that it was just, did you just feel like it was just getting too hard, like you were forcing it too much, it just wasn't happening? And this bridal stuff, you got these signs and you got these orders and you thought, you know, maybe this is I don't want to say a better or easier direction, but maybe just something different to explore for the time being that might work for you?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I just couldn't sustain it financially. I put in more than I was taking home. That was the bottom line. I had to meet production minimums with the factories.
Yeah.
And you have to put the money up front. Now, when you're an independent designer, I had no financial, I had like a very small investment, but it was not enough to have, you literally have to have you have to have at least 8 to 12 months in the bank so you can sustain. By the time you make it and then ship it and get paid, you need that 8 to 6 months to sustain. And I just couldn't do it. And then another thing is, when you're a small company, there's financial company that could buy the receivable from you, which is they give you upfront, and then you can use that money for your production and things like that. But I just never made it to where I had enough to have a company like that. So there was nothing really that was kind of in the middle for me to use financially as a loan or anything. And I just couldn't make the jump. And I think I was getting close to making the jump, but I guess it was just bad luck where whatever accounts I had, most of them closed or moved. And I guess that was my sign. Because they were doing good. I mean, everything I sold to the stores sold to customers. So it wasn't like something like that happened. But you have to put so much money up front. You have to not only make the samples, then you have to make the production, which you make it, you put it up front. You lay out all the money for the materials, the factory, whatever. Then you have to lay out all the money for the marketing, which is the photo shoot, whatever else you're doing, video. And then you have to wait for it to get shipped. Then you have to wait for them to pay you. Most people pay after 30 or 60 days. I had some things that were on consignment, which I strongly don't recommend to anyone, because that is just, there's just no, unless you already have a bunch of samples or things that are just sitting there, those things can go on consignment. But making new things for going on consignment, I really don't recommend to anyone, because it never really pays. Stores they expect for you to give them a small, medium, large, for example, of one item. And if you're getting paid for those 3 pieces, you're getting paid. But if you're on consignment, you only sell the small, you're really losing money. So I guess that's just what happened. It was just, fate. I don't know.
Yeah, I really, someone's brought it up on the show before, how we never really talk about the true finances that go on behind the scenes of being an independent designer. So I'm really, really happy and appreciative that you bring this up so transparently. And as you said, you need this money to initially start up, but then on top of that, you need 8 to 10 to 12 months in the bank of reserves, and that's to keep investing in your business, and also, to live. If you have no other income sources, maybe you do have other income sources. Maybe you work part-time or something, but the money that comes in from the orders, that money just turns around and goes right back into production, into a photo shoot, into something else. And so, what you said you did, I think, 2 successful seasons. So and you were maybe close to the turning point. What are you seeing in terms of your experience and maybe other designers who you crossed paths with, in terms of getting to that tipping point where things start to become profitable and you start to make money and you don't have to continually keep investing every dollar plus more back into what you're doing?
I mean, that's a really hard question. I think a lot of my friends who are into activewear, where there's the technology advancement that they're using, those people really were able to take off, because it was just something completely new, and they can get backing from big financial, because they're interested in the technology. You can get backing, because for a fashion designer, an investor, that's an emotional investment. This investor has to believe in you, in your passion, in your dreams. They have to know you personally. It's not like you're selling socks and you can say, I sold 3 socks and I made this amount of dollars, and then if I get orders for 3,000 socks, then I would make. And you know that socks are going to sell and everybody's happy always. Fashion is an emotional investor for a big investor to invest. So they either have to see something where there's like technology or something like that, or you really have to get lucky and find, you're a rich uncle or something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no actual point where you can show return on investment. You're changing up every season. One season can be great, one season can be bad. I had a friend of mine, she had a great season, broke into some major stores, like Anthropology and things like that. And then the next season, they didn't pick up anything of her new collection. And that was a harsh reality for her. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if I knew the answer to that question, I wouldn't be doing the bridal. But I always say this, that I think the measurement of success in business is measured by when things get rough. The people that can survive when things, get rough and there's no money coming in, everybody can be a great businessman when there's orders coming in. But for you to be a successful businessman, the people that survive the lows, those are the people that make it. And you have to go through the lows to know what you're doing. You have to. It's very unfortunate because nobody wants to talk about it or think about it. But you have to. And if you make it through that point, then you can really make it. That's what I believe. And I think a lot of the things that I'm doing now with my bridal, I've learned so much from all my mistakes that I did with my collection. And most likely that's one of the other reasons why my bridal, I feel, is going, a lot faster and smoother. But you can't like discredit all your failures. Those are the things that, you really, that's when you're either going to be successful or not, going through the bad times.
Yeah. It's, that's so great. And I myself have had some big failures in my business, and it feel like when you're down in those trenches, like when that roller coaster drops and you feel like it comes to a crashing halt at the bottom of the hill, I mean, you just want to curl up in a ball, and sometimes you do.
Yeah, you do.
You do.
You lose your mind at least once a week.
Yeah, there's tears, and it feels really fucking hard. And but the reality of it is that, we all have those moments, and like you said, it's talking about that and being honest that that's what it is, and you have to make it through that. And that's how you start to measure the success. It's so easy to feel successful, to feel like everything's great when things are going great. That's when it's easy. And then when you get slapped in the face or you feel like you get run over by a bus, that's when, you got to pick yourself up and figure out how to get back to that successful point. So I love your just raw, honesty about so much of this, because as much as it's maybe really tough for people to hear this, that's a reality. You have to hear this because this is what you're going to go through. And if you can't stomach that, then maybe it's not right for you.
Exactly. I mean, they always say you have to have a thick skin in fashion, and, and you think it's dealing with people or something superficial. You don't realize it. You're literally you're going to have days where you can't afford to buy a cup of coffee or something like that. You know what I mean? Or even if you can, if you think about any of the big designers that are successful, they all went through it. They all had ups and downs, and they talk about it now, but they didn't know if they were going to make it. And I feel like that's anyone in any business when you're in business for yourself. There's so many outside factors that influence your business. You could do everything right, and you could still get, because you're dependent on other people in the community of professionals that you're working with, or just, the business. Like right now, I feel like a lot of the retail business is failing and closing because, they are not, maybe moving as fast with the change of attitudes of people. But if one of your big accounts closes, it's not that you only lose whatever they owe you for that month, but you lose that income monthly, and nobody talks about that. For example, if I had a store, one of my stores, I'm selling them every month or every 6 months or whatever the case is. When they close, you don't get paid that whatever last invoice is, but you're also not going to be getting paid ahead, and that's what puts you out of business. That's what it crashes you. Is because you lose the year-long, business.
Yeah. And so then it turns into it's a constant churn, and you can essentially, this is such a cheesy business thing to say, but, there's even an acronym for it, ABC, always be closing, always be out there getting new accounts, closing new deals, always be selling. It's a constant, which is why, a lot of brands ultimately wind up having sales teams and things to that extent, but that takes a while to get to that. You mentioned earlier, and so I'd love to talk about, what are some of the things that you, like the biggest lessons learned that you took from your experience as an independent designer with your collection into your bridal business that you think have helped you with your success in that. And so maybe there are things that have just helped you in the bridal business, or maybe there are things that, looking back, if you had this, 5, 6, 7 years of experience, what are some small things you could have done differently? For people out there listening, what's working now that you learned from some of those hard lessons early on?
Well, when I decided to take on the bridal, I really wanted to do it slow and a lot slower paced, because I was personally burning myself out, sort of say. All I did was work, every day, 7 days a week, all year round. And with the bridal, I decided that I also have to have my personal life. I can't only live for this. I still do, but I try not to. And I really just take it slowly. And I know I have big ideas, I have big things, but I want to get to them slower. I'm not just, oh my God, this has to happen this year. I have more of a kind of a 5-year plan, basically. My plan is more year to year always, but I make specific goals, what I want to achieve with my website or with my, reach to customers, how many sales I want to get. And I work towards a specific goal. And once I achieve that, then I'm like, okay, let me think about the next idea or the next thing that I can add. So it's really, growing at a pace where it can sustain itself. I really have, I'm gonna really try very hard to grow that way, and it's working so far, and it just makes you so much happier, because it's actually working.
So do you think that if you had maybe gone a little bit slower with your collection and financially alleviated yourself by, maybe working part-time, so you're bringing in some income to help support that, and as a result, you have less time to work on your collection, and so you build it a little bit more slowly, but it's less of an emotional and a financial strain, that you could have, spent a little more time building something that could have worked long term, that you didn't get burnt out both emotionally and financially so quickly? I mean, am I hearing that kind of right?
It wasn't quick. I was in business for like 5 years doing it.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I can say maybe, but at the same time, like I said, I believe in my own personal journey that everything happens for a reason. So I really feel that I found my true calling now. And whatever happened with my line was great, and I loved it, and I'm very proud of it. But I'm also happy that it got me to this point, and I'm doing what I'm doing now. So I can't say, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think there was not one thing where this is what I did wrong and that's when everything started to fall apart. It was nothing like that. It was just it's I don't know. I really don't know. I know that people have started big labels from nothing. I don't know if in our day and age, if I just feel the competition when you're basically competing, especially if you make your line here, you're competing with, things that are made overseas in Bangladesh or China. And there's just no financial way you can sustain it. There's just no way you can turn a profit where you're paying over 1,000% more than the big corporations, or not corporations, but the big house. They are basically corporations. So there's just no way. So I think being a part of a collective is something that I would recommend. Where maybe you are a part of a collective with other designers and you kind of, do things as a group. So financially it's easier on everyone. But even if you make 50% profit on your, that's still not enough, to compete with production overseas.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, and on a lot of levels, it's hard. I mean, you're working with lower minimums, lower margins. But on the other side of the coin, the industry is shifting a bit. There's more resources for designers to do domestic manufacturing. Pricing is getting more competitive. I know overseas factories are starting to compete at lower minimums, and the consumer is changing a little bit.
Yes.
So I think, while all of the things you say are absolutely true, and it is still tough and it's still a fight. I mean, that's at least my experience, and from a lot of the people I've had on the show, is that there is a shift. It's a very slow shift, yes. But it's the needle is starting to move the other direction, and so there's ways that people can figure out how to do it, how to make it work, and again, it's going to be hard. Like you've said, it's going to be very hard.
I 100% agree with you, and I believe in that. I believe that the consumer is going to change. I absolutely agree with that, because there's only so much consumerism that we can take. Finding a special piece that was either custom made for you, or the person that made it, or there's a story to it, something that is really of great quality. having a piece like that in your closet, that's something that you're always going to want to wear. And you're never going to, throw it out. It's always going to be with you. And then always, every time you put it, you're going to feel that special connection to it.
Yeah.
And I think people are really tired of just, buying a bunch of crap, wearing it on the weekend and then throwing it out. That's one of the reasons why Rent the Runway is so successful, is because you don't have to own this crap. You can just wear it and then whatever, you're done with the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. And I always believe in fashion. It's, there's new blood always needed. Like I said, and there's new ideas that are always coming. And that's what, that's what it is. And you have to, just because my first line didn't make it doesn't mean I'm not going to have a line in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm really hopeful for that. And I'm going to do it. I already, I am originally from Bulgaria. I already made it to New York, so to say. So that was kind of, for me, all the luck I needed. Now it's only hard work ahead. And I'm ready. And I've been ready. So I 100% agree with you that I think the consumer is changing. And it is our job to really point that out to them. Because most people have no idea what actually goes into making anything anymore. They don't have their grandma sewing at home, showing them how things are made,
Yeah, but it's, and not the custom wedding dresses are anything super, super new, but on some level, I would imagine you've got to be seeing some of that with the brides that you're working with and these people that want this dress that has a story, that they work with you and they didn't just buy something off the shelf. And not to say buying something off the shelf is not right, because for a lot of people that's what works and that's great. But, you're providing now with your bridal business this customized experience to create something really special for these brides. So, I think on some level that speaks volumes.
Yes, it really is an alternative to the store, and I go to all the trade shows. Like I said, I always try to go to networking things or trade shows and things like that. And I see it's the same factory turning out the same designs for all the big, or whatever, with small variations. And it's fine. It's completely fine. But there's another alternative now with me, and there's other people that do it too. And where I think a lot more people are shifting into having a custom experience. They really want something special. They want the experience. They want to be a part of it. They want to know, how it works, why we're doing it this way. You can incorporate something really special, either like a vintage fabric or some piece of something from your mom's dress or something else, or you can incorporate a design element from your venue or in your invitations. And there's just, it's something special. And for bridal, it works perfect because that whole day is about, really being special and having an amazing experience. So it just goes hand in hand for bridal. But I think it's going to also translate to, to other parts of fashion. And but the bridal, what I noticed also is a lot of my brides, they want to wear one thing for this part of the wedding and then change into something else for another part of the wedding. And when they work with somebody like me, that's very easy to do. It's kind of like creating their own mini wedding collection. So everything is kind of the same, but figure it out for whatever part. So yeah.
That's really great, and that's such a fun process to go through for the bride and for you to sort of create that mini collection. That's really fun. I know you said you still are going to these events and getting out there and talking to people and meeting people, but for anyone out there listening who wants to go into custom bridal or custom I guess custom anything where you're making one off, just for that customer to fit their body. What are some ways you've been able to attract new clients and grow? And I know it started pretty organically, but have you done anything specific to help build that business up?
Well, I think the bridal industry is a little bit different than fashion. I think if somebody wants to buy a coat, they're going to look at the coat and buy it and wear it. If you're thinking of going to buy a wedding dress, you're really going to do research on that brand. You're really going to, if they're going to go to my website, they're going to go check out my reviews. They're going to see whatever other press I have or anything online. They're going to go to my Instagram. They're going to really look at the whole brand and kind of online stalk me. And then they're going to meet with me. It's a long process before, you decide to do it together. They really, because it is custom, they have to, I have a long meeting with them and we discuss everything. It doesn't have to be just about the dress. Everything about the wedding, and just kind of to get to know each other's personality, because ultimately if they're going to go with me, they have to like me and they have to trust me. There is no dress hanging in the closet they can try on and we can make, or whatever pantsuit or whatever it is that they want to create. So they have to get to know me and trust me. And I think really putting all that information out there and really giving them the time to talk and to go back and forth with email, that really helps me because, I deal with a lot of brides and it's such an emotional time during a person's life. And it's also very stressful, so, you've heard about the Bridezilla and whatever. It's because, it's very stressful. You're spending a lot of money, you're making a lot of decisions. Everybody's giving you their advice. And it's very easy to lose your mind. So I talk to my brides and I almost talk to them through some of those things too. But just, I don't know. I mean, it's just being really visible with everywhere that you can online. It depends on what you're doing. If it's bridal, there's so many resources, and the bridal community is a lot more open because everybody kind of works together. Because, if you have a great photographer and you have a great floral person, you can recommend it, and then they can recommend you, and everybody kind of recommends each other and works together. So it's just being visible and putting as much information out there about the process. A lot of my brides really enjoy where when I share with them exactly the process, the technical parts. They really love that because it's something new for them and they don't know what it takes, and they love being a part of that. And at the end of the day, most times it's almost like we design the dress together. We make it together in that way, where we really pick the fabric out together. Or we decide, should we go a little bit lower or higher, whatever, and that's really nice for them.
Yeah, that's so interesting because, it's something that we see, we talked about it earlier, but we see this shifting in the fashion industry on a consumer level is the consumer's desire to be more involved in the process. Not even necessarily involved, but that the process is more transparent. It happened with Everlane years ago, and then all these other brands are kind of hopping on that trend of transparency in the design and production and development process. People like that. That's interesting to the consumer, whether it be buying something off the shelf or whether it be, working with you to do a custom gown. People, that's fun for them. They've never done that before. It's new. It's really interesting. And then, at the end of the day, you feel like you have this thing that you guys created together. So I love that. And the other thing I love that you said, and what the first thing I thought of when you kind of talked through the process of how you work with them and how, this is a tough time in their life and it's very stressful and they're making a lot of decisions and spending a lot of money. It sounded almost as though you are there for them even during the initial process before they even, let's say committed to working with you. You're there for them as a friend and as a support person. You're not out there doing like hard sales.
No. Yes. I mean, I'm not doing that because ultimately I take a lot of integrity in my work, and I want the woman wearing my clothes to be happy, to feel amazing. Because my clothes, fashion is an art that doesn't really live unless somebody wears it. So me having my own vision for someone, it's one thing. But having my own vision, being inspired by that person, what they really want and what's really going to make them feel amazing, that's like something incredible. And whenever, there's always that one moment when we put the dress on, either when it's almost ready or when it's ready, where like, the bride just kind of like looks at herself and like is either tearing up, or you can just feel like the magic, after all these months of like talking and working and prepping. That is just incredible to me. So I am there as a friend and as a support person because I have a lot of experience, and why not offer it and share it? If you're not in the industry, you don't know where to start. You don't know what to do, and it gets so overwhelming. And if I can share and help them in any way, why not? That's the whole point, is to. And most of my brides I become friends with. I can call them and ask them for a favor. You spend a lot of time together, so it's you build a relationship, and I think my brides really appreciate that as well. That we have a connection after it's done, and like I said, that's why I said that I know making hard sales is great in some things, but for me, I have to make a sale. I have to show them exactly what they're getting themselves into. With me personally, they have to like me and like my personality, because otherwise, if I make something and they're not happy, that's not good for my company or for anyone. It's not just bad for her; it would be bad for me too, because all my brides for the rest of their life, it's not like, oh, I wore this top one time. This is their wedding dress. For the rest of their life, they're going to be my PR team out there talking. So that's why I really focus. And I really enjoy it. I actually really enjoy it. I do. I think that's also why now I feel like that I found my calling, because I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Natalie. So many great stories. And I love your humbleness and your willingness to just be really raw and truthful and honest, to talk about some of these things that, nobody really wants to put out there on the table. And I'll end with a question that I ask everybody at the end. You've said many things that would answer this question. So if you need to repeat, you can. But what is one thing that nobody ever asked you about working in fashion that you wish they did?
I don't know. I think that, fashion, people have it in their heads that fashion is this like really glamorous environment where we're all like really cool and we do really cool things all the time. And we dress up and we go to these fabulous things, or fashion shows or parties or photo shoots. And, and it's true. It's true. We do that. We do that, and it's fun. But, there's a lot more that goes into it. And I think that the fashion, if you're in it for those reasons, because you like shopping or you like clothes, like to wear, things like that, as a designer, that's not enough. You really have to really get to know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and really learn the craft. And I love, I know that you don't have to sew every garment, but you have to know what you're doing. And it's a very long process. I think it takes about 10 to 20 years. I interned with some of the big designers in New York, and I know their story. And I always, watch interviews or, read a lot about the big names. And there's a trend where they actually, they were the new kid on the block, but to get to be the new kid on the block, it took them 10 to 20 years. So, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but
no,
I just think that you should, I want to end on a positive. It is amazing. And you get those moments where, when you're in your photo shoot and you see your whole outfit together and the camera is like clacking and you get goosebumps going down your spine, or, at the end of the fashion show, you get those moments, now with the bridal, when the bride calls me like the next day or from the I've had brides call me from their wedding, and you get these moments, and that's what makes it all worth it. Because you really did something, and and that's what you should be happy for. So,
I love that, and that's such a great note to end on. That there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and you've got to have the drive and the ambition to want to get through all that. But then that moment, whatever that moment is for you as a designer, it makes it that much more special, those goosebumps that much stronger, that emotion that much stronger. And I think at the root of it, that's why a lot of us do what we do. So I love that. Thank you for painting that picture. All right, Natalie, where can everybody listening find you online?
My website is NK Bride, and you can see examples of my work there. You can see a lot about my process. My blog also, I try to post cool things about bridal ideas that are not related to dresses.
Awesome.
And also you can see my previous collections through there too.
Awesome. nkbride.com?
nkbride.com.
Awesome. I will link to that in the show notes. Natalie, thank you so much. This was really, really fun to chat with you. Thank you for sharing your story. And as I've mentioned already a couple times, for being so vulnerable and raw and humble about what really goes on behind the scenes. I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit the show notes at sfdnetwork.com/27. I'd also like to take a quick minute out to thank all the people behind the scenes that make this show possible for you guys. I have a little small team that puts a lot of work and effort into making this possible, and I want to give them a quick shout out and thank you. First, to my amazing husband, Mark. He is not only my editor and my sound guy to make sure that the audio sounds great, but he is also the inspiration behind this show, and I would not be sitting here talking to you guys right now if it weren't for him. Thank you, Mark, for all your support over the years and for pushing me to get this show out the door and give all this great content to all of you guys listening in there in the audience. Second is my awesome promoter, Teresa. Teresa helps get the show out and share the show on social media and make sure that you guys get notified of every new episode. So thank you, Teresa, for helping promote the show and getting more listeners on the podcast. All right, you guys, thanks so much again for listening. I will ask you one more time, if you do like this podcast, if you like this episode, do me a quick favor and share it with 3 people who you know would enjoy it as well. I've gotten amazing feedback from a lot of you telling me how life-changing this podcast has been for you, how much it's helping you grow, gain more confidence, understand the industry better. So think about how much it's helped you and pass that love along. So please share this with 3 people that you know would enjoy it. I would be super grateful. SuccessfulFashionDesigner.com. Thanks so much for listening, you guys, and I will talk to you next week.